Chapters 10 through 14 of the First Book of the Kings, from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 10. When the Queen of Sheba heard the report of Solomon's lordly fame, she came to try him with difficult problems, and arrived at Jerusalem with a very great troop, bringing perfumes and a large amount of gold and precious stones, and went to Solomon and conversed with him about all that was in her heart. There was nothing she proposed to the king that he did not explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba perceived all the sciences of Solomon, and the house which he had built, and his dining room, and the residences of his ministers, and the attendants serving him, and their uniforms, and the cupbearers, and the offerings which he offered in the house of the ever-living, there was no more spirit left in her, but she exclaimed to the king, "It was a truth that I heard in my country about your affairs and about your wisdom, but I did not trust the statements until I came and my eyes saw it. And indeed I was not told of the half of the extent of your sciences, for what I have heard is better than was reported to me. Your nobles are happy, your ministers are happy, who always stand before you to listen to your wisdom. Your ever-living God should be blessed who has granted to you to sit upon the throne of Israel. The Lord of Israel should be loved forever, who appointed you as king to do justice and right." She then gave the king 120 talents of gold, and very many spices and precious stones. There never again came so great a quantity of spices as the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. But however the ships of Hiram which brought gold from Ophir brought also from Ophir a very large quantity of almug wood and precious stones. And the king made from the almug wood brackets for the house of the ever-living, and lutes for the palace of the king, and harps and guitars for the singers. Such almug trees were never again brought, nor have been seen to this day. King Solomon also presented to the Queen of Sheba all she desired, or she asked for, beside what she was given direct from the hand of King Solomon. Then she turned and went to her own country, and passed over to it. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in each year was 666 talents of gold, beside that produced by taxes on traders, and the import duties, and tribute from all the kingdoms of the west, and the dependencies of the country. Solomon consequently made 200 shields of beaten gold. 600 of gold went to each shield, and 300 targets of beaten gold. Each contained 3 pounds weight of gold. And the king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. The king also made a great ivory throne, and plated it with refined gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and a carriage head to the throne from behind it, with arms on both sides of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside them, with 12 stationed on the 6 steps, one upon each side. There was nothing made like them in all the kingdoms. All the drinking cups of King Solomon were of gold, and all the furniture of his palace in Lebanon was of pure gold. None was of silver or brass in the days of Solomon, for the king's ships of Tarshish at sea with the ships of Hiram returned every 3 years. These ships of Tarshish brought gold and silver, ivory, monkeys, and peacocks. Thus Solomon was greater than all the kings of the earth in wealth and wisdom, and all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear the learning that God had given to his intellect. And all of them brought tribute of articles of silver and gold, and fabrics, and arms, and spices, and horses, and mules, imposed year by year. Solomon also accumulated chariots and horses, and possessed 1,400 chariots, and 12,000 cavalry, which he placed in cavalry barracks, and with the king in Jerusalem. So the king made silver in Jerusalem like stones, and planted many cedars and sycamores in the lowlands. The horses that Solomon had were brought from Egypt, and the collecting merchants were paid for them by the king according to contract. They brought up and fetched an Egyptian chariot for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. And the same from all the chiefs of the Hittites, and from the chiefs of Aram, who brought them to hand. Chapter 11. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women beside the daughter of Pharaoh: Moabites, Ammonites, Aramites, Zidonians, Hittites, of those nations whom the ever-living said to the children of Israel, "You shall not marry with them, and they shall not marry with you, for they will turn your hearts after their gods." Solomon descended to love them, and had 700 princess wives, and 300 plebeian wives. And when Solomon became old, his wives turned his heart after strange gods, and his heart was not at peace with his ever-living God, like the heart of his father David. Solomon consequently went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after the abominable Milcom of the Ammonites. Thus Solomon did wrong in the sight of the ever-living, and did not walk after the ever-living like David his father. Solomon also built towers to the abominable Chemosh of Moab, on the hill opposite to Jerusalem, and to abominable Molech of the Ammonites, and did the same for all his foreign wives, with censers and altars for their gods. Therefore the ever-living was displeased with Solomon, for his heart declined from the ever-living God of Israel, who had appeared to him often, and had instructed him upon this matter, never to follow after other gods. But he regarded not what the ever-living had commanded him. The ever-living consequently demanded of Solomon, "Say, what has been done to you, that you have not regarded my covenant and my institutions as I commanded you? I will tear away the kingship from you, and give it to your servant. However, I will not do this in your days, because of David your father. I will tear it from the hand of your son, yet I will not tear the whole kingship. I will give one tribe to your son, for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem which I have chosen." The ever-living, however, raised up an enemy to Solomon, Hadad the Edomite, who was of the royal race of Edom. And when David invaded Edom at Aloth, Joab, the commander of the army, buried the slain, and executed all the males of the king of Edom. For Joab occupied 6 months there with the force of Israel, until they destroyed all the male life of the king of Edom. But Hadad escaped with some Edomite nobles, officers of his father, and went to the Mitzrayim. But Hadad was a little child. And they went up from Midian, and came to Paran, and collected men to themselves from Paran, and went to Mitzar, to Pharaoh, king of the Mitzrayim, who gave him a house and maintenance, and said to him, "The land is open to you." Hadad also found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, and he gave him as a wife the sister of his own wife, the sister of Thachphenes of Gabira. And the sister of Thachphenes bore him Genuba his son, whom Thachphenes reared in the palace of Pharaoh, so that Genuba was in the circle of Pharaoh's palace amongst the children of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David was asleep with his fathers, and that Joab the commander of his army was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Release me, and I will go to my own country." But Pharaoh asked, "For what reason? You came to me, then why should you seek to go to your country?" He, however, replied, "No, yet, releasing, let me go." God also raised him an enemy in Rezon ben Elida, who had fled from Hadadezer, king of Zobah, his prince, and collected men to himself, and became general of a troop of mercenaries with David. They afterwards went to Damascus and settled there, and he ruled in Damascus. But he was an enemy to Israel in the time of Solomon, beside the mischief of Hadad, and he was an annoyance to Israel, and reigned in Aram. Jeroboam ben Nebat, also an Ephrathite of Zarad, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, wife of Almana, an officer of Solomon, rose to favor with the king. And the reason why he rose to favor with King Solomon was, when he was building the fortress around the extent of the city of David, his father, the man Jeroboam, was energetic, and so Solomon noticed the youth, for he did the work well, and he appointed him over all the builders of the house of Joseph. But on one occasion, when Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem, Achiah the reciter, the Shilonite, met him in the road, when he was clothed in a new robe, and both were alone in the open country, where Achiah seized the new robe which was upon him, and tore it into 12 pieces, and exclaimed to Jeroboam, "You take 10 pieces, for thus says the ever-living God of Israel, I will tear the kingship from the hand of Solomon, and I will give to you 10 of the tribes. But the 1 tribe of Judah to him, because of my servant David, and because of Jerusalem, the city I have chosen from all the tribes of Israel. Because he has forsaken me, and worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of Zidon, and Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Milcom, the god of Beni-Ammon, and has not walked in my paths to do right in my sight, according to my institutions and decrees, like his father David. I will not, however, take all the kingship from his hand. He shall remain supreme all the time of his life, because of David my servant whom I chose, who regarded my commands and my institutions. Yet I shall take the kingship from the hand of his son, and give you the 10 tribes. But to his son I shall give 1 tribe, so that there may be a light to David my servant in all times before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen to myself, to fix my name there. Thus I will take you, and you shall reign in all that your soul desires, and you shall be king over Israel. And then, if you listen to all I command you, and walk in my way, and do right in my sight, by preserving my institutions and commandments, as David my servant did, I will be with you, and build you a permanent house, as I have built for David, and I will give Israel to you. And I depress the race of David because of this, but not for all time. Solomon consequently sought to kill Jeroboam. So Jeroboam arose and fled to Mizar to Shishak, king of the Mizraim, and continued in Mizar until the death of Solomon. As to the rest of the affairs of Solomon, and all that he did, and his wisdom, are they not written in the history of the events of Solomon? But the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over Israel was 40 years. Then Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of his father David, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his place. Chapter 12. But Rehoboam went to Shechem, for the parliament of Israel came to elect him king. But Jeroboam ben Nebat heard of it while still in Mizar, where he had fled from before King Solomon, for Jeroboam had settled in Mizar. So they sent an invitation to Jeroboam from all the parliament of Israel. They then addressed Rehoboam, saying, Your father was heavy upon us, but you can now lighten the load of your father from your subjects, and lift off from us the load that he laid upon us, and we will be your subjects. But he replied to them, Go away for 3 days, then return to me. So the people went. King Rehoboam then consulted the advisers who had stood in the presence of his father Solomon during his life, asking, What answer do you advise me to return to these people? And they replied to him, saying, If you will be a subject of these people today, and answer and speak fair words to them, then they will be your subjects at all times. However, he rejected the advice of the old men which they had advised, and consulted the lads who had grown up with him, who stood before him, and asked them, What answer do you advise that I shall return to these people who have addressed me, saying, Lift from off us what your father laid on? And the lads who had grown up with him advised him, saying, Reply thus to those people who addressed you, saying, Your father loaded us, but you take it off. Say this to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's loins. So I will put a heavy yoke on you, for I will add to the yoke of my father. He flogged you with whips, but I will flog you with scorpions. But Jeroboam himself came, and all the parliament with Jeroboam on the 3rd day, as the king had appointed, when he said, Return to me on the 3rd day. And the king answered the people harshly, and refused the counsels of the old men which they advised, but addressed them as the lads advised him, and said, My father put a load on you, but I will add another to it. My father flogged you with whips, but I will flog you with scorpions. Thus the king did not listen to the people, for the ever-living caused the people to revolt for the purpose of establishing the word that the ever-living spoke by the means of Achiah the Shilonite to Jeroboam ben Nebat. Then all Israel saw that the king would not listen to them. Consequently the people returned the king word to say, What is our share in David? For we have no inheritance from the son of Jessai. To your tents, Israel. Now look to your own house, David. and Israel went to its tents. Some Israelites, however, continued to reside in Judah, and Rehoboam reigned over them. King Rehoboam, however, sent Adoram, who was over the conscription, but the parliament of Israel rose against him and stoned him to death. So King Rehoboam made haste to mount his carriage and to fly to Jerusalem. Thus Israel revolted from the house of David until this day, for when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and invited him to the parliament, and they elected him king over all Israel. There were none left afterwards to the house of David except the tribe of Judah alone. When Rehoboam arrived at Jerusalem, he convoked the forces of the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 soldiers, trained for war, to fight with the house of Israel, to regain the kingship to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. But the word of God came to Shemaiah, a man of God, to say, Speak to Rehoboam ben Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and the rest of the people, saying, Thus says the Lord, You shall not go up, and shall not war against your brothers, the children of Israel. Let each return to his home, for this event has come from me. And they listened to the word of the ever-living, and turned back from the march, as the ever-living commanded. Rehoboam consequently built Shechem in Mount Ephraim, and resided there, and advanced from there, and built Phanuel. Then Jeroboam reflected, Now the kingship will return to the house of David, if these people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the ever-living at Jerusalem. For the heart of these people will turn to their prince, to Rehoboam king of Judah. So the king consulted, and made 2 golden calves, and said to them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of the land of the Mitzrayim. He therefore placed the one in Bethel, and the other he placed in Dan. But this thing was a sin, and the people went before the one to Dan. He also made the house of pillars, and made priests from the mass of the people who were not of the descendants of Levi. Jeroboam, besides, made a festival in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like the feast that was to the ever-living, and went up to sacrifice to the calves which he had made, and fixed in Bethel, with the priests of the columns he had made, and offered upon the altar that he had constructed in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month, as his heart had decided to make a festival for the children of Israel, and he offered incense on the altar. Chapter 13. When suddenly a man of God came from Judah with a message from the ever-living to Bethel, whilst Jeroboam stood at the altar with the incense, and the messenger of the ever-living approached to the altar, and said, Altar, altar, thus says the ever-living, Behold, a son shall be born to the house of David, his name Josiah, and he will offer upon you the priests of the columns who burn incense upon you, and the bones of men upon you. He also gave a proof of it at the same time, saying, This is the proof that the ever-living has commanded. Look, the altar splits and scatters the fire that is upon it. But when the king heard the message of the man of God which he proclaimed against the altar at Bethel, Jeroboam extended his hand from the altar, exclaiming, Seize him! And his hand remained as he extended it from him, that he was not able to return it to himself. The altar also split, and poured out the coals from the altar, according to the proof which the man of God had given with the message of the ever-living. The king consequently begged, and said to the man of God, Entreat now the presence of your God, and pray on my behalf that he would restore my hand to me. So the man of God entreated the presence of the ever-living, and he restored the king's hand to him, and it became as formerly. Then the king said to the man of God, Come with me to the palace, and refresh yourself, and I will give you a present. But the man of God replied to the king, If you would give me the half of your palace, I would not go with you, and I would not eat food, and I would not drink water in this place. For the message of the ever-living commanded me thus, saying, Return not by the road you go. He accordingly returned by another road, and did not return by the road he came upon to Bethel. But there was an old preacher residing at Bethel, whose sons came and related to him the whole of these facts, which the man of God had effected on that day in Bethel, the messages which he had delivered to the king. They reported them to their father. When their father asked them, "Can you tell what road he went?" His sons happened to have seen the way the man of God who came from Judah went. He consequently said to his sons, "Saddle my ass." And they saddled the ass, and he mounted it, and went after the man of God, and found him sitting under an oak, and said to him, "Are you the man of God who came from Judah?" And he answered, "I am." Then he said to him, "Come with me to my house and eat bread." But he replied, "I am not able to turn back with you, or to go with you to eat bread, nor can I drink water with you in this place. For the message of the ever-living commanded me, you shall not eat food, nor drink water, nor even turn back to go by the road on which you came to it." But he replied, "I also am a preacher like yourself, and a divine messenger spoke to me by command of the ever-living to say, 'Take him back with you to your house, and let him eat food and drink water.'" But he lied to him. He consequently returned with him, and ate bread in his house, and drank water, and they both sat at the table, when the word of the ever-living came to the preacher with whom he had returned. And he exclaimed to the man of God who came from Judah, "Thus says the ever-living, alas, for your disobeying the direction of the ever-living, and not regarding the command which your ever-living God commanded you. For you have eaten food and drunk water in the place where he commanded you not to eat bread or drink water. Your body shall never go to the tomb of your fathers." After he had eaten food, and after he had drank, however, he saddled him the ass to go to where he had returned back, and he went. But a lion met him in the road, and killed him, and his body was stretched on the road, and the ass stood by one side, and the lion stood at the other side of the body. And men happened to come and see the body stretched on the road, and the lion standing at the side of the body. And they came and reported it in the village in which the old preacher dwelt. And the preacher, who had turned him from the path, heard it, and exclaimed, "It is the man of God who disobeyed the direction of the ever-living, so the Lord has given him to the lion, who has broken and killed him, according to the word which the ever-living spoke to him." Then he addressed his sons, saying, "Saddle me the ass." And they saddled it, and he went and found the body stretched on the road, with the ass and the lion standing at the side of the body. The lion had not eaten the body, nor injured the ass. So the preacher lifted up the body of the man of God, and laid it on the ass, and brought it back, and came to the village of the old preacher, to mourn and to bury it. So he laid the corpse in his own tomb, and mourned over it as if it were his brother. And after he had buried it, he said to his sons, "When I die, you must bury me in the tomb where the man of God is buried. At the side of his bones place my bones. For it was the ever-living commanded what he proclaimed as a message of the ever-living against the altar that is in Bethel, and against all the temples of columns which are in the town of Shomeron." After this message, Jeroboam did not, however, return from his evil way, but went and made priests from the mass of the people for the columns his hand delighted to make. And they became priests of the columns. This matter was the sin of the house of Jeroboam, which destroyed and wasted it from the face of the earth. Chapter 14. Some time after Abiah the son of Jeroboam was sick, and Jeroboam said to his wife, "Rise up now, and disguise yourself, so that they may not know that you are the wife of Jeroboam, and go to Shiloh where Achiah the reciter is, he who announced to me to reign over this people. And take with you 10 loaves of bread, and plum cakes, and a jar of honey, and go to him. He will inform you what will happen to the lad." Jeroboam's wife accordingly did so, and rose and went to Shiloh, and came to the house of Achiah. Now Achiah could not see, for his eyes were closed by age. But the ever-living said to Achiah, "The wife of Jeroboam has come to inquire about her son from you, for he is sick. Answer her so and so, for when she arrives she will be like a stranger." So when Achiah heard the sound of her steps coming to the door, he said, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why make yourself thus like a stranger? However, I will explain your difficulty. Go and say to Jeroboam, 'Thus asks the ever-living God of Israel. Answer him, when I raised you
from among the people, and appointed you a leader over my people Israel, and tore the kingdom from the house of David, and gave it to you, when you were nothing except an officer of David, who kept my commands, who walked after me with all his heart, doing what was right in my sight, whilst you have done wrong in everything which has come before you, and you have gone and made for yourself other gods and metal images to insult me, but have cast me behind your back. Therefore I will bring evil on the house of Jeroboam, and I will cut off from Jeroboam the pisser against the private wall, and he shall be forsaken in Israel, and I will burn the house of Jeroboam as dung is burnt to destroy it. The dogs shall eat the dead of Jeroboam in the city, and the birds of the sky shall eat them in the fields, for the ever-living has said it. But you, arise, go to your home, while your feet go to the city, the lad shall die. But all Israel shall mourn for him, and bury him. He alone of Jeroboam shall come to the tomb, because there was found in him something good by the ever-living God of Israel among those of the house of Jeroboam. And the ever-living will raise up for himself a king over Israel, who will destroy the house of Jeroboam from this day. But what? Even now, yes, the ever-living strikes Israel as a reed is shaken by the waters, and will pull Israel up from this beautiful country which he gave to their fathers, and scattered them beyond the river, because they have made shrines to insult the ever-living. And he will make fugitives of Israel for the sin of Jeroboam that he sinned, and which he induced all Israel to sin.
Then the wife of Jeroboam arose and departed, and came to Thirtzah. But when she came to the threshold of the house, the youth died, and they buried him, and all Israel mourned for him, as the ever-living commanded, when he spoke by the means of Achiah the reciter, his servant. The rest of the doings of Jeroboam, how he warred, and how he reigned, they are written in the records of the events of the times of the kings of Israel. But the period that Jeroboam reigned was 22 years, when he slept with his fathers, and Nadab his son succeeded him. Rehoboam the son of Solomon, however, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years of age when elected king, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city that the ever-living has chosen from all the tribes of Israel to place his name in. And his mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. But Judah did wrong in the sight of the ever-living, and offended him more than all their ancestors with the sins that they sinned. For they also built for themselves columns, and pillars, and shrines on every high hill, and under every leafy tree. And there were Sodomites in the country, and they practiced all the abominations of the heathen whom the ever-living had driven out before the children of Israel. Consequently, in the 15th year of the reign of Rehoboam, Shishak, king of the Mitzrayim, advanced against Jerusalem, and took the treasures of the house of the ever-living, and the treasures of the king's palace, all that was seizable, with all the golden shields that Solomon had made. But King Rehoboam made shields of brass in their place, and put them into the hands of the generals of the infantry who kept guard at the door of the palace. When the king came to the house of the ever-living, the infantry bore them, and afterwards bore them to the arsenal of the infantry. As to the other affairs of Rehoboam, and all he did, they are recorded in the record of events in the days of the kings of Judah, for there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all their time. At last Rehoboam slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess, and King Abiam his son reigned after him. The end of chapters 10 through 14.